With Donald Trump's return to power in January 2025, asylum seekers need to understand exactly what asylum officers are looking for during interviews, because denial rates are going to skyrocket. It's going to be more important than ever to go into your asylum interview prepared. You need to know exactly what the asylum officer needs to get from you in order to approve your case. And guess what? Most asylum seekers have no clue. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you the key things you absolutely must know to ace your asylum interview in this new, harsh reality. And we're starting right now. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government. But now, as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending or are considering applying. I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for an asylum interview for multiple years. Listen, we're entering a critical period for asylum seekers. With Trump returning to office, the asylum process is going to become more challenging than ever before. That's why understanding exactly what asylum officers are looking for is absolutely crucial. You see, most asylum seekers focus on the wrong things during their interview. They think they just need to tell their story, or they might focus on convincing the officer that they're a good person who deserves the chance to stay in America, or they're determined to provide unnecessary country context, or just go off on any number of tangents. They think they've got wide latitude to talk about whatever they want, and that they actually know what will make the officer want to approve the case. But that's not how it works. The officer won't just let you talk freely. Your chance to express yourself is actually very limited, and you've got to make every moment count. Also, the officer really doesn't care about anything beyond the strict asylum eligibility requirements. You need to understand precisely what boxes the officer needs to check to approve your case. Based on my experience as an asylum officer, there are two main aspects of any asylum case that you absolutely must address: persecution and nexus. Persecution basically means serious harm. The officer needs to know if you've been seriously harmed in the past, or if there's a reasonable possibility you'll be seriously harmed in the future. But here's the critical part: not all harm counts as persecution. This is especially important to understand in the second Trump administration, when officers will likely be instructed to apply an extremely high bar for what constitutes persecution. What kind of harm is severe enough to count as persecution? Being tortured, like enduring electric shocks or having fingernails pulled out, that definitely counts. Getting shot or beaten so badly you need hospitalization, that counts too. But getting pushed around or harassed, almost certainly not enough. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for asylum success, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and bell notification so you don't miss the insights that I share on this channel. Okay, here's something crucial that many people don't realize. Psychological harm can count as persecution too. For example, if someone puts a gun to your head and pulls the trigger, even if there's no bullet, that could count as persecution if it causes severe psychological trauma requiring therapy. Also, even multiple smaller incidents, whether physical or psychological, can add up to persecution. To assess whether you've been persecuted, the officer will ask specific questions. Have you ever been physically harmed in your country? How many times? What injuries did you suffer? Did you seek medical care? What was the diagnosis and treatment? How long did it take to heal? They'll also ask about psychological harm. How has what you've been through affected you? Have you seen a mental health professional? Do you have nightmares, trouble sleeping, anxiety, or depression? These questions are critical because they help establish the severity of harm, a threshold that's likely to become much higher under the new administration. And the officer is assessing both whether what you've endured in the past is sufficiently severe to rise to the level of persecution, and whether the harm that you fear for the future would, if realized, be sufficiently severe to constitute persecution. They're also assessing just how likely it is that you'll in fact be harmed in the future. So, you've got to be ready to speak in detail, not just about past harm, but also about any circumstances that indicate that you're at real risk of suffering grave harm in the future. In asylum lingo, you've got to establish that you have an objectively reasonable fear of persecution, that there's a, quote, reasonable possibility that you'll be harmed in a manner so severe that it counts as persecution, in the way that word is defined under U.S. asylum law. But here's what I can't stress enough. It's not enough just to show you've been or will be persecuted. This is where the second main aspect in every asylum case comes in. It's what we call Nexus. Nexus means connection, specifically the connection between the persecution and one of 5 protected characteristics under U.S. asylum law. You've got to convince the officer that the persecution is motivated by one of these 5 things: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. The officer needs to understand what's motivating the persecutors to target you. They'll ask questions like, what did they say when they first approached you? What did they say during and after the incident? What have they said exactly in threatening you? Do you know of people similarly situated to you in terms of your protected characteristic whom the feared persecuted have harmed? These questions aren't random. They're trying to establish the persecutor's motives. You must be ready to discuss any statements made during incidents of harm or threats, and any circumstances that show why you've been targeted. What makes the bad guys want to harm you? How do we know that's really what's motivating them? There are other crucial elements too. The officer will want to know if your persecutors are from the government or are private citizens. This distinction is vital because if they're private citizens, you'll need to prove the government is either unable or unwilling to control them. Expect extensive questioning about whether you reported incidents to authorities and what happened when you did. They'll also ask about internal relocation, whether you could be safe by moving to another part of your country. You'll need compelling reasons why this isn't possible. For example, if your child needs special medical care only available where the persecutors are, that's relevant. Finally, they'll ask about any countries you passed through before reaching the United States. This relates to firm resettlement. If you had permission to stay permanently in another country but chose not to, you can't get asylum here. Listen, U.S. asylum law is highly complicated, and the officer is going to be assessing a great many things in your case. But the elements that I've covered today are the key things in an asylum case. They're the things you need to prepare to explain in great detail at your asylum interview. Under the second Trump administration, preparing for these questions becomes more critical than ever. The margin for error will be smaller, and the scrutiny will be more intense. You need to be ready to provide clear, specific information about each of these elements. Remember, this isn't about just telling your story. It's about systematically addressing each requirement for asylum in a way that leaves no room for doubt. With approval, rates likely to plummet under the new administration, you can't afford to miss any of these crucial elements. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. Remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an asylum strategy session so we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.